it's a political bogey. It's a TV talking point. The reality is, and Gary, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, more companies are buying more of their shares of stock back than ever before. When the market is super high, now what does that tell you? Buy shares of stock, invest in growth opportunities for my company, right? Reward shareholders or invest in growth. It's not an issue of do they need the cash back or do they have enough cash on their balance sheets. It's they're not finding the opportunities.
Exactly.
There are bigger structural issues in terms of how we're competing and what competitive opportunities there are for major global corporations than anything related to cash.
Mark's right. I mean, CEOs,
Say that again?
Mark's correct. Corporates today are using a lot of their cash to buy back shares or increase dividends, both trying to return shareholder value. That's a big topic in the corporate boardroom today, is how to return shareholder value. Another way, and this is consistent with what Valerie said, and I agree completely with her on the U.S. economy, we have some real fundamental competitive advantages to the world today. You look at the price of natural gas and you look at the price of energy in the United States, we're substantially below most of the industrialized world today. The only place that even comes close to competing with us is Australia. So when you take that big component of energy and you throw it into the U.S. economy, we should be bringing jobs back. We should be becoming the manufacturing capital of the world. That will happen. It's going to happen slowly, and it's going to be dragged by consumer demand. People won't build a plant to manufacture something if they don't think they can sell it. Now, the good news is they're starting to get a little bit more optimistic they can sell more product.
But it's kind of a catch-22, right, Mark? I mean, you know, companies are waiting to see this demand. At the same time, we've got a high unemployment rate. Companies aren't hiring, thus there's no demand. I mean, how does that cycle start to shift?
Well, two elements here. One, Gary's exactly right on energy, but there's also the issue of transportation of energy. And that's a big topic. In my mind, and I'm not an expert on the topic, the transportation, enabling the transportation of energy to make it even less expensive to create a plant is the equivalent of building highways in the 50s to connect communities to increase commerce. And so we've got to overcome that hurdle of how do we transport and convert energy. So that's one element. And beyond that, I mean, it's not about demand's always good. There's no downside to demand. And you always want to have policies and you always want to have companies rewarding fulfillment of demand by bringing jobs here. But the reality is it comes down to innovation. Because consumption is created in new ways through innovation. And I think part of the challenge of big corporations is that there's nobody forcing, other than in some digital areas and some technology areas, there's no real disruption happening right now. And as long as there's no one feeling threatened, they're not having to innovate as quickly. They're not having to invest their money in R&D. You're seeing the percentage of sales, percentage of capital put towards R&D decline. And so we're not seeing the same levels of innovation. And to me, that's a bigger threat than anything. Because if it comes from overseas and somebody innovates, that's how we get disrupted.
But does innovation also come sometimes from the small business owner? I mean, it's small business owners that have a great idea that can move it forward. Are they able to access the capital markets as much as they should right now?
Not as much as they should. But on the topic of innovation, that's where the federal government comes in. And one of the top priorities for the president has been, let's continue to invest in science and technology. Let's make sure that the federal government is spending some of those initial dollars that are so important to create innovation. We are having a competition right now to create these manufacturing tech enhancement zones where we're going to have a competition, and it'll be business pairing up with universities where we can help fund important research that has to be done that is really the fuel for innovation that a small business can't necessarily afford on their own. A big business can't afford on their own, and that's an important role of government. And I think one of the challenges that we have in Washington is figuring out what exactly is the role of government.